This is one of my all-time favorite soups, stews, chilies, whatever you want to call it. This is one of my all-time favorite. And why? It's my grandfather's second wife, called her Mimi. And she was from New Mexico. And her thing was green chili stew. Amazing. Grandpa didn't like pork too much. So he loved pot roast. So you can tell with this, the carrots and a little bit of onion left over and some celery chunks. Whenever I make pot roast for big dinners, I always make extra, and this is about 3 pounds of leftover chuck roast from pot roast. And this takes you all of 30 minutes. My grandfather absolutely loved this, and I'm gonna share with you something I grew up with. It is a perfect combination of happy, green chilies, coriander, cumin, black pepper, garlic and onions and all kind of mixed up in there. And you know, inside 30 minutes, since this is already cooked, this goes in at the very end pretty much. And we're gonna use some amazing green chilies, peppers, onions, smoked roasted corn, extra leftover, and we'll talk about that. So stay tuned, let's go. You know, green chili stew is just a part of New Mexican cuisine, and outside of the pot roast my grandfather insisted on instead of pork, we're gonna make pot roast green chili stew. So first, about 2 tablespoons of olive oil or vegetable oil, quite great. Crank the heat up to medium high. There we go. This dish takes literally less than 45 minutes, between 30-35 minutes depending on when the potatoes are done. Everything is ready. There you go, onion, peppers. We're gonna cook this for 5 minutes. So the secret to this marvelous stew is adding the chili rub, adding this chili spice in layer by layer. So each addition, we're gonna add a little bit of this in, and it's gonna bring out deeper and deeper qualities all the way up through the dish. 1, 2. 2 tablespoons to start. Again, cook this for about another 4 minutes. Already you can just smell the aroma coming out. So this is one of those dishes, it can go either way. You either save the potatoes you had from the pot roast, or like me, I just take the extra meat and use that only, and carrots and a little bit of celery is left. This is not a potato-laden dish, but you can add potatoes to it, and I choose to do that, and that's how I make this recipe. Cut in half again, then cut in half again. And now you got 2, 4, 6, 8 little pieces. And they're gonna cook really fast. These are like little miniature Yukon Gold potatoes. So when they cook, they're gonna be really creamy. And I know when I talked about making the soups, that you don't wanna boil, angry boil your vegetables. However, these style of potatoes, you wanna vigorously boil them when you add them into your soup, your stew. What it does is you see this little ring? If you can close that little ring inside there, the starch ring, it starts to break that down, and that's a little creamy, like a little halo almost. That breaks down really fast and keeps the inside intact. So you're gonna get this creamy richness that almost like a velvety mouthfeel, and then you're gonna have the little bitty chunks of potato. But again, the potato is just an accent. Just an accent and add to dinner. After 5 minutes, they're nice and soft. They're starting to get all translucent-ish. Add in your potatoes. 1 more tablespoon of spice rub. Okay. Very important. one of my favorite ingredients. Now, my grandmother used to get these dried from her sister coming down from New Mexico. But this is the best I can find that I like because this company makes it in mild, Santa Fe. And they make hot, and let me tell you, it will light you on fire. Just saying, it's napalm. But the mild version is extremely good too. There we go. Set 2 of these. Now wait a minute, wait for it. Give it broth. Shake up 1. And by the way, these jars are fabulous. Used left over for spices and extra, you know, when you want to use your own. There you go. There it is, almost on high. All of this flavor is going to soak into the potato. All right, potatoes are in, starting to bubble, brought the heat back up. See the little bubbles, little happy bubbles going on? Let's give it a little quick taste. Flavor is awesome. Salt is almost there. One thing that I love about my rubs and blends, most of them do not have a whole lot of salt in them. So what you get is all of the spice, the seasoning, the whole mix itself is a seasoning as well as anything you want to use it for. And you can determine your own salt. So with that, it's got a lot of flavor to it, a lot of heat. If I add more of this, I'm going to add a lot more heat than I want. So the only salt I use when I make any of these, any kind of cooking really, is Atlantic sea salt, fine ground. And this is the exact salt I use in my rubs and mixes. So these potatoes are going to soak up a lot of salt. Let's give that a start first. Overall, you might have to add an additional tablespoon because your meat's perfectly seasoned. It made a pot roast out of it. We just need to make sure that this in here is the right flavor. All right, since this flavor profile is right now, I like the way it tastes. It's a little salty, but that's okay because that's going to soak into the potatoes and season your potatoes. Next, 2 cups of corn. Now, when I say 2 cups of corn, this is fresh corn that I had on the cob. I cut off the cob and I smoked it while I was doing some brisket the other day. Frozen corn, fresh corn, just as long as you have 2 cups, because it's still going to cook for 20 minutes from this spot. Now, my grandmother, she loved fresh corn. And I think the smoke, for me, you know, just putting it on a smoker if you can, smoking the corn just gives it this really deep, rich, smoked, earthy flavor. Well, my grandmother loved to just take the corn on the cob and slice it up. I think she really just mac out with the cleaver, getting her frustration out. So I always hated picking out the corn and chewing around the corn cobs. And guess what? I'm an adult. I don't have to eat it like that. So I make it easy for everyone. So give this 20 minutes. The potatoes should be finished. Because once the potatoes are nice and soft, we're going to add the meat and a little bit of broth and call that a day. We're about 10 minutes into the 20 minutes. What you'll see, how thick that is? You're reducing your liquid down considerably. The potatoes are soaking that up. So in order for it not to burn, here's the thing. While cooking is a science, it's an exact science to some fundamentals. Baking, temperature, time, meat, things, you know, but you have to be able to adapt. And by this right here, I know that within another 10 minutes, if I walk away, it's going to be porridge burnt to the bottom. Even though nonstick, it'll be a nasty mess. So we're just going to add a couple cups of beef stock. You can use water if you like, but you're already using pot roast, so why not make a really good beef stock? There, see? Now, Bring that back up. Now I have enough, now I should have enough liquid to finish the potatoes for the next stage. Oh, here we are now. To the magic time of adding the last bit. Now, what I really had to do about 5 minutes ago was add in another tablespoon of salt. It just wasn't there, and the potatoes, they're extra creamy. Again, it's if you mess up a soup and you add too much salt, the best thing to do is just cut a potato in half, really any kind, put it back in your soup, and it will absorb out the salt. But these potatoes are especially starchy right now, so I had to add in more salt to it, and that brings out a lot more flavor. So, that being done, potatoes are just like little hot nuggets here. You can see, ow, hot. But that's really what you want. Like they're just right, break apart. Ah, yes. Now, when I add the meat, about 2.5 pounds, chopped up leftover pot roast with some carrots and celery nuggets and extra goo. Need a little more broth to that, so again, we're gonna add about another 2 cups. I did measure that actually. We're gonna bring this up to boil, turn the heat off, and just let it sit for about 15 minutes all together. And the flavors are just gonna come together to this little magic point. I'm gonna crank the heat up. And there is your green chili beef stew. Just how I grew up with it. So as I've made this green chili pot roast stew over the years, the pot roast thing when pork is this big fundamental part of green chili stew, my grandfather and my whole mother's side of the family are from Maine, and that's just Yankee pot roast. It's like potatoes, carrots, beef, that's it, that's your pot roast. So that's just what my grandfather grew up with, and that's what we always grew up with in my house. Over the years I've made this with, I've taken chuck roast and smoked it like a brisket until it was extremely fork tender. I have taken leftover brisket flat, the lean side, and chopped that up, leftover extra, and made the green chili with that. Instead of using smoked corn, use plain frozen corn and then putting in the brisket, a whole different dynamic. And just play with it that way. In Texas, pepper jack cheese, queso fresco ranchero. And you can go to most Latino markets and most grocery stores now. I did a Bafo and cut the package in half the wrong way. That's okay. Looks like this. It's kind of crumbly, just falls apart. Not that melty, but it's kind of salty, kind of sweet. It has this amazing texture to it. And so growing up, my grandmother, she loved to make this mix. And similar brand, she'd fry up some corn tortillas into tostada shell styles and take about 6 or 7, smash them. Just mash them in a bowl with your fist. I said, Mimi, it hurts my hand. She goes, well, get tougher hands. Like, all right, Mimi says so. And Mimi said so. I mean, that woman would chew through bricks. All right, so we got some crushed tortillas. About 1/3 of a block of some pepper jack cheese. Pop that in. And we're gonna take this little bit of ranchero queso fresco. Cotija is another similar cheese, but it's really, really salty and it doesn't melt. It's what you usually see on garnishes. It's what you usually see for a garnish. So with that, just take this mix, a little bit of cheese and corn tortilla, and it helps to thicken it. It gives it this cool flavor taste. And there you go. Make sure you break up the cheese a little bit. And if you don't break the queso fresco up, and you get these big chunks, that's okay, don't worry about it. Oh, here we go. Add the meat, bring it to a boil, turn off the heat, and we're roughly at about 38 minutes. So the way you cook this and the layers that you add the spices, the flavor, for flavor-wise, this will taste, honestly, like it's been cooking all day, at least for several hours. So, I mean, because that's how long it would have taken you to make the pot roast anyway. And as we're younger, flavors and tastes aren't the same as we're an adult. And this is one of those dishes where it's an evolution of taste. As you got older, as I get older, it still reminds me, by refining it a little bit, I don't lose the memory and history of where this dish actually came from. But seriously, ain't that sexy looking? Look at that. Green chili beef stew. Like, how can this not just make you want to hug something? A little bit of the magic. The top. That's it. Oh. All right. Let's taste test, man. A little bit of corn chip, a little bit of cheese, a little bit of broth, a little bit of meat. Oh, right. That's good. That's really good. And as you saw by adding all together how much spice rub I actually made for this amount of food, you don't have to add very much. Excellent. Rock on. Okay, here's mine.